All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you to everyone out there, as always, for listening and watching. However you consume Talking Buffalo, I do appreciate you very, very much. I also appreciate today's sponsor, Sunny Reds, 1531 Abbott Road, Lackawanna, minutes away from Highmark Stadium. Some of the best wings, food, drinks, vibes you're going to get anywhere. So make sure you go and check out Sunny Reds. All right, this is the episode, our Friday episode, our Bills preview. Of course, none bigger than this week. The Buffalo Bills at Arrowhead to face the Kansas City Chiefs with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. And I'll tell you what, I have a tendency in these big moments to get a little bit bias and the fandom comes out just a little bit sometimes with me. So what I wanted to do today is bring in someone who I know can give us some unbiased, objective insights to this game. So I've reached out for the first time ever, actually on this show, nearly 7 years in. I'm joined right now by Jarrett Bailey from the Sporting News, also behind the Steel Curtain on SB Nation. What's going on, Jarrett? How you doing? Thank you for coming on the show. Appreciate you, man.
No, I appreciate the invite, man. Hold on, I'm trying to see. Hold on, I've got some here. Let's see. Got I got the Drew Bledsoe bobblehead. If we want to make it like a real Buffalo show here. So
I
yeah, I
love
got
it, man.
a nice $2.50. This cost me at some sort of like toy store. So there he is.
I have on it's not on the camera shot. I got a couple of those behind me. Not on camera though. Off to my left, I have a Drew Bledsoe. He's right next to a Coy Wire and Travis Henry. You want to talk about some
There
obscure
you go.
bobbleheads. We're gonna listen. So we're gonna talk plenty of Bills, plenty of Chiefs here. Again, I really appreciate you coming on. One of the more respected NFL writers and voices out there. And I want to start, actually, let's start here. Okay. So now these teams are very familiar with each other. Josh Allen said on Wednesday, it almost feels like a divisional game now when the Bills play the Chiefs because it seems to be almost twice every year. They've played 8 times since 2020. They're 4-4 against each other. The Bills have dominated in the regular season. They're 4-1 in the regular season. They won 4 straight during the regular season. However, of course, the big thing, Kansas City is 3-0 in the playoffs. How much, in your opinion, does the history matter between these two teams over the last 5 years, if at all? And more specifically, these teams also did play earlier this season, and the Bills won that game 30-21. There were injuries on both sides, lots of factors, but still, the Bills won like they seem to do every year in the regular season. How much does that matter going into this game, in your opinion, if at all?
I mean, it matters just because, like, I mean, Josh said it, like, it's almost like a divisional game. And when there's that much familiarity, you start to realize, some teams' tendencies and whatnot. And you can use that to your advantage in several ways. So, that said, like, in terms of like the game earlier this season, I think that on both sides, both Bobby Babbage and McDermott weren't going to show like a whole ton defensively. Spags wasn't going to show a ton defensively for this game because they both knew that we're probably going to see each other again. We're not going to, just let every trick out of the bag. What was a week 10 game. So,
Yeah.
I would say the fact that they've seen each other so much in the postseason, that history matters a whole lot more than the regular season games, just because they're going to keep a lot of that stuff close to the vest. It's September, October, November, December, but come January, these teams have seen each other plenty. The core guys on both sides have seen each other in these moments plenty of times. So um, I think that a lot of the turnover on the offensive side of the ball for the Bills might actually benefit them a little bit, just because this is the first time that Matt Collins has ever been in this spot with this team. Curtis Samuel ever been in this spot with this team. Amari Cooper as well. Khalil Shakir was there last year and he had a big game, but I think that he's taken such a massive step forward to where,
Mm.
if you're the Chiefs, like, yeah, you played these guys earlier this year, but like this is a different spot for a lot of these guys. So the history certainly does mean a lot, especially for Josh and Patrick, who, have both, been in this game plenty of times before, are the two best quarterbacks in football right now. This is just going to be another chapter in that rivalry. So I think the familiarity, with both of these teams, that plays a big factor into this.
what as somebody, so you're based in Pittsburgh. Like I said, you write about the Steelers, you write about the NFL too for Sporting News. Again, I'm more connected here. I'm in the trenches. I'm in Buffalo, so I might have a little bit of a jaded view from an outside perspective, so to speak. What is the vibe like? The sense that you get around the country with these two teams playing? Obviously, it's a marquee game. Two of the best quarterbacks to do it, squaring off against each other yet again. Most people anyway, certainly know the history between these two teams. But what kind of sense do you get from talking to people or just social media and stuff like that outside of Buffalo? Outside of Kansas City, those markets, like I want to say that it feels like America wants the Bills to win this football game. But again, I don't want to, potentially have a jaded view because I cover the Bills and I actually live in Buffalo. Like, but what's your sense like league wide right now? What people are thinking about going into this game?
Nobody wants to see another Chiefs Eagles Super Bowl. I promise you that much. Like everybody, like this is like Jaden Daniels and Josh Allen are basically like the Avengers pulling up on Thanos right now. Like nobody wants to see either of those two teams in the Super Bowl again. So, yeah, I think it's pretty obvious who like America is going to be rooting for. Like everybody outside of Kansas City, Missouri is going to want the Bills to win. Everybody outside of Philadelphia is going to want Washington to win for these two games. So, um, I don't think it's necessarily a secret that Buffalo, yeah, they've been here before and they've come up short. But the thing with that is, though, is like Josh Allen hasn't come up short. Josh has played really well in these playoff games, especially like the last two. The first one in the first AFC title game, they were still babies in a lot of ways. Like they hadn't been in that spot before. And so I think you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think a large portion of the fan base is like, hey, we got to the AFC Championship game, man. We're happy to be here.
100%.
But there's a large difference from the 2020 season to now being 2025, where, all right, we're no longer just happy to be here. We've been here. It's time to take that next step. So I think Bills fans and just NFL fans as a whole are just like, I want to see the Chiefs back in this thing. And we don't want to get, if you're the Bills or Bills fans, you don't want to be, another step once again for the Chiefs getting back to the Super Bowl. So I would comfortably say America wants the Bills to win. Like this is like I said, this is Captain America with his shield just going to battle with the bad guy in a superhero movie right now. Nobody outside of the Chiefs fandom wants them to win this game.
Sure. And look, at the end of the day, when the ball's kicked off, that doesn't matter what the country thinks.
Absolutely not.
Right. It don't matter to either team and to any of the players. But just nice to know, like I said, from a little bit more of an outside perspective. And you're spot on when you talk about 2020. I mean, there was hope that the Bills could win. It's not like the Bills were some chump team, and they were winning at the end of the first quarter.
I was going to say they jumped out to like a 10-0 lead. The Chiefs had like a special teams error that they capitalized on, and then they just rallied off a bunch of points.
You could tell 3-4 minutes in the second quarter, you're like, the Chiefs are the better team, and they're eventually going to win. Which, of course, they ended up doing 38-24.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to get into before we talk about the Chiefs and Bills specifically, well, I guess this is directly related to the Chiefs. I hate doing this. I hate being that guy whoever, week after week, you sit there and you bitch about the officials. They're human. Errors happen. I understand that. Going back to the Bills-Ravens game last week, again, I don't want to be a hypocrite because I was absolutely losing my mind when a phantom holding call went against Deion Dawkins that was not a hold. I'm losing my shit. I'm yelling at the TV. I'm tweeting out. It's like week after week, these officials have way too much impact, yada, yada, yada. Heat of the moment. Things happen, though. And all in all, the Bills only had one penalty, which is kind of remarkable. That was the only penalty of the game for the Buffalo Bills against the Baltimore Ravens. But, I mean, facts are facts and trends are trends. And I saw a stat to me that was just nutso. In the last 11 playoff games with the Kansas City Chiefs, the opponent has had more penalties in 10 of those 11 games. And the one time they didn't, it was an even game. The Chiefs have never had more penalties in a playoff game during this run than their opponent ever, not once. Does that concern you a little bit going into this game? This just seems to be a team that gets the benefit of a couple calls. We saw it last week. Now I want to be clear too. Houston was, they were bitching a lot after the game and they had some beefs, but that's not why the Chiefs, won that football game. They won that game because Houston allowed a long kickoff return to start the game, put themselves in a hole. Stroud got sacked 8 times. They had no idea they were treating Travis Kelce like it was a third tight end on the team. You know what I mean?
Right.
Things like that. But still, it was a factor in that game, and it's been a factor a lot in the playoffs. And again, 11 times, man, that's a trend at this point, ain't it?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like that. And
Yeah.
look, Buck and Aikman were calling it out during the broadcast too, where
Yeah.
after the Will Anderson roughing the passer, like you could start hearing the mumbles of Aikman, like, okay, that's not a penalty. After the unnecessary roughness called on the slide, I mean, Aikman lost his mind. He's like, that's not a penalty. What are we doing? And then Russell York chimes in. He's like, yeah, that's not a penalty. Like when all we can talk about after a playoff game is, wow, like that was a horribly officiated game that was clearly one-sided. That's a problem. And it it became pretty clear, and Connor Ward made this point on Heed the Call, where he's like Mahomes feels like he's got one up on these officials because he tried to do the whole flop thing out of bounds to draw another penalty. Like he feels like he can do that, and that's a problem. So, and Rob Gronkowski was on Up and Adams, and he's like, look, if you're going to hit Mahomes, if you're the Bills, like don't do it too hard because he's going to try to get a penalty and it might work. So like you got to be careful. And that does it feel like a built-in like slight disadvantage? Kind of, but at the same time, you can't go away from this game if you lose saying, well, then blame the refs. They're not going to do that, but you've got to go in, take care of business, play a clean game, which by the way, the Bills largely do play clean games. I mean, like you just pointed out, they had one penalty against the Ravens and that penalty wasn't a penalty. So they played a largely clean game and they're one of the better teams in the league at doing that. So as long as they do that, I don't think that there's going to be any sort of, worry. But, if there is, a ticky-tack play where, Russo hits Mahomes, maybe a split second after he throws it and he, throws his body on the ground and whomever the official is, I don't know who the officiating crew for this game is, by the way. But whoever that may be throws a flag, then yeah, there's going to be that conversation of here we go again, where he gets bailed out, the Chiefs get bailed out and a drive gets extended. As long as they can get off the field on timely downs and aren't being picked apart on third downs, I think it shouldn't be much of a factor. But if we see a call like that, that's going to be, you're going to see it on Twitter. Oh, here we go again. The call's going the Chiefs' way. And you know what? I'm not one of these people who says, oh, the NFL's rigged, because I think those people are stupid. But after that game against the Texans, like those tinfoil hat people are always going to point to that. And I'll be like, see, it is right. And then that is the last thing that the league should have right now is fuel to that fire and legitimate fuel that people can look at and be like, okay, something's fishy here. So hopefully we don't get that. But I feel like it's something that the second it does happen, everybody's going to be talking about it. But hopefully
I could tell you this from a Buffalo standpoint. In Buffalo, obviously fans, but not even just the fans, the media too. There's how big of a concern or a story potentially this is. I don't know more than 3 or 4 officials in the NFL, okay, or at least crews anyway. Clete Blakeman is the official. I know that because a lot of people in the media in Buffalo have actually written stories about that. And it's noteworthy because the Kansas City Chiefs are only 6-5 in games that he officiates. In a billion years, I would never know that.
Wow.
Were it not for the fact of these stakes, where there's like a list. There was a whole list of officiating where
they showed a graphic last week where it's like, oh, Clay Martin, the Chiefs are 7-0 in games he officiates. Like, all right, we're really going to be doing this. Like everybody knows who Ron Tolbert is now because he's like notorious 5-down Ron. What NFL referee has a nickname? We give a nickname to Ron Tolbert because of how many flags he throws, and he's officiating the Super Bowl. So it's that. That's a problem where we know, like we used to know Ed Hockley, and that's it because he was ripped and he was cool. But now we know like way too many officials, and that's a problem. Yeah. We shouldn't know the names of officials and write stories about them for their records for certain teams like that. That's dumb. I hope that that's a trend that dies very quickly.
I agree with you 100%. And like I said, the fact that I know the official, not just the official, but I also know what the Chiefs record is, that just tells you what, that there's a level of concern about that. I'll say this, not really
6-5 though. I mean, like if you're a Bills fan and you play into the refs,
you're happy about that,
right?
You're happy about that. I think Hockley is doing the Eagles game, and like Mahomes like 10-1 in games that he officials or something wild like that. So sure, look, without having to have a preview or predictions, I hope this game doesn't come down to it. I hope an official doesn't have a big part of this game, just like I hope it doesn't come down to a kick either. Let me ask you this too, then we'll get into some Chiefs stuff. What is your level of respect. What's your take on the Chiefs this year? Obviously, the one loss in a game that actually matters. I mean, that they're trying to win. And that was the Buffalo earlier this season. They've done what they have to do. That defense has been really good now for the last 2 years. They find a way to win. They played the Steelers this year.
Mm.
And but there's a lot of games like the Carolina game, the Denver game, one of the Chargers game. There's the Vegas game. There are games they should have lost. Come down to kicks or just one fluky play or break here and there. I mean, but here they are, the one seed and one game away from going to a historic third straight Super Bowl. How good is this Chiefs team, in your opinion, before we kind of dive into them a little more specifically?
I mean, it's still the Chiefs. It's still Andy Reid. It's still Steve Spagnuolo. It's still Patrick Mahomes. It's still Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, and Karlaftis. Like the core of guys that are there. Like it's still the Chiefs, and you got to respect that. My problem, or I shouldn't say problem, my hesitancy to just completely write them off, even like when we were in the midst of winning close games against the Broncos, winning close games against the Panthers, is that we had this like similar conversation a year ago where they were just playing off what the offense didn't look good. After they lose to the Raiders on Christmas, everybody was like, "Yep, this is fine. This is going to be the year where they don't make it to the AFC Championship game," and of course they win the Super Bowl that year too. So like that was my hesitancy to just completely write them off, and it's still my hesitancy to do that because I think in large part, not to say that the regular season doesn't matter or anything, but for them, like they know they're going to be in the playoffs. So like a week 11 game against Carolina, they can't be bothered by it. They're going to do all they can to win. They want to win, but they're not going to, throw out all the stops to make sure it happens. And, they'll be able to do enough to get it done. And then they're able to just like flip that switch once the calendar flips and, turn to another gear once they get into January. Even so, like they didn't look great against Houston. But like last year in the playoffs when they played in the divisional round against Buffalo, they looked really good. The run game looked really good.
Yeah.
Like Pacheco had a big game last year. And I understand that Milano didn't play and Bernard didn't play, but all things included, the Bills defense couldn't get them off the field. So it's still the Chiefs. I think that's my main takeaway of everything. It's like it's still Mahomes. It's still everybody there, and you got to respect it. But hopefully, at the end of Sunday, we're not talking about them getting back to another Super Bowl, and you can respect them for it, but also hope that we're not talking about the same thing again for a third straight year.
Yeah, as a media person, especially if it's not a team that you cover, it does get tiresome talking about the same team, year after year after year. And yeah, last year, look, same thing. The defense was good. The offense kind of stunk last year. Difference was last year, they only were the third seed in the playoffs. And then it got to be the playoffs, and they played Miami, and Miami didn't want that smoke in that at Arrowhead and that cold. They want nothing to do with that game. And then, of course, they played a really good game, and they beat the Bills. They go to Baltimore, and they win on the road. They just turn up that switch, and there's nothing to suggest that they won't do it here again on Sunday. But yeah, look, this is a team that has not scored more than 30 points this season. To me, that's remarkable to only have one real loss this season. Again, I'm not going to count that Denver finale. To only have one real loss, but still not scoring more than 30 points in a game all season is wild. Now, conversely, the Bills are the only team this year that gave up more than 25 against. So the defense has been, really rock solid
right
all season long. Conversely, the Bills, I think it was 8 weeks in a row, they scored 30 points. So like something's got to give with these two teams. But talk about the Chiefs' ability, and this is, I'm sure you're going to say from experience and just being winners, which they are, but 16 consecutive games in a row, one score games, they have won, including this year. They've won 5 by 5 or fewer points this season. But man, 16 games in a row, one score games, and you are 16-0 in them. That's nuts to me, man.
Yeah, and I think it just speaks to, even if they aren't dominant, they're smart and they're able to not, shoot themselves in the foot, which keeps them in those games that are close and puts them a level above those teams that, the game against Tampa Bay. I'm just trying to think of like all these one score games like Tampa Bay, Carolina, Atlanta. Like they are more experienced than those teams in terms of, playing in big games and playing in close games. And I think a lot of that has to do with it, but also, obviously the quarterback there, the head coach there, and the defensive coordinator there, like the players that they have, like when you're going up against lesser teams. And I think it comes back to what I said earlier. that they're just, I don't want to say sleepwalking, but like they're happy. They're playing and they're not trying to lose. But like if they do, they're not going to beat themselves up over it because they know they're going to be there in January and they can just turn that switch. So I think a lot of it is once it gets down to late in the game, they kind of lock in a little bit more. We've been here a billion times before. We know how this is going to go. As long as we give 15 a chance to score, he's more than likely going to do it, get us in position to win, and that's usually what happens. But also just like opportune plays. Leo Chenal has been really good. He had the blocked field goal against Denver. I think he's the one who blocked the kick against Houston as well. So just opportune players, really good role players, and their stars all doing their jobs. 16 is an incredible number. I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again. But I think in large part it just comes down to this is a team that we might not ever see anything the likes of it again. So it's just a perfect storm of quarterback, defense, head coach, experience, and efficiency and smarts that are able to help them, win those close games at such a high clip.
And I'll tell you what. Obviously, the stakes are huge for Buffalo. They're calling it a legacy game in a lot of ways for Josh, for Sean McDermott. Getting over the hump is at stake, so there's tons of pressure. Don't think for a second that Kansas City's not thinking the same thing, though. They're trying to do something that nobody has ever done, ever. And that's win 3 straight Super Bowls. So pressure is high on them, too. And I'm a little bit, when you look at Pat Mahomes and what he's done against the Bills in the playoffs, right? So he's 3-0 against the Bills in the playoffs, 337 total yards per game, 9 touchdowns, 1 turnover. Just playoffs as a whole. He's 16-3. He's averaging like 280 passing yards a game. 42 touchdowns, just 8 picks. Dude just gets to another level in the playoffs. And I am concerned there as somebody who covers the Bills. The Bills have been fantastic all season long and kind of playing that underdog role, so to speak. A lot of people run them off in the spring and the summer. People were picking them to finish second, maybe even third in the AFC East. Josh Allen was voted the most overrated player in the NFL by his peers before the season started. That was fuel for the Bills. I promise you that. It's been fuel all year long. They took it personally that they were home underdogs, even though they hadn't lost a game at home last week against Baltimore. That helps fuel them. That jerk-off idiot from Baltimore, Coleman, who was talking shit about the city losers and all that stuff. They admitted it. They said that played a factor in their motivation. I kind of feel like, and it's all true, but I'm a little bit concerned when it comes to the Chiefs. All season long it's been Lamar and Josh and Lamar. Joe Burrow played his way into an MVP conversation at the end of the year. Haven't been hearing nothing about Pat Mahomes. He's always been like an afterthought. But here we are, playoff time again. And I get concerned. I'm like, oh yeah, what about me? My name's Pat Mahomes, and it's time for me to unleash. That's a legit worry, I feel like, for Bills Mafia. You agree?
Yeah, especially just because he's done it so many times to them in big games where it's just like, I feel like after the first completion that's like big, I think a lot of Bills fans are gonna be like, oh no, here we go. Like this is where it starts. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that McDermott has been far too conservative defensively in these games. And he can't afford to do that. But it's hard for Buffalo because they don't have an A-tier pass rusher that can consistently put pressure on Mahomes by just sending 4 guys. And if you blitz against him, he's very good against the blitz. So it's a pick your poison type thing where, that's why they went out and got Von Miller, but obviously he got hurt and it hasn't been the same since. So you're going to need big situational plays from Rousseau and Epinesa and Von Miller when he's out there. That I think is what's going to be the difference in this game. It's 3rd and 7. Can you get field? Okay. It's 3rd and 6. Can you get a stop? It's not about getting every stop. It's about getting the big stops. And as long as you can do that, then I love their chances. But they haven't been a good 3rd down defense. And I know that, Roswell Douglas was talking about that in the locker room after the game against Denver, where he's like, oh, everybody's talking about our 3rd down defense and whatnot. Well, against Baltimore, it was bad. So it's one thing to be able to overcome a team like Baltimore who, they've got dynamic players. Obviously, Lamar's very good and Derrick Henry's very good. But they're not, 3-time Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens. They're the Baltimore Ravens. The Kansas City Chiefs have been there, done that, and Mahomes is looking for his 4th ring. And there's a lot to say about that. So you have to make the timely plays. You have to get off the field in the big moments. And again, 3rd and 2, if you give up a 3-yard script, whatever. But if it's 3rd and medium, 3rd and long, get off the field. You cannot just sit and let Travis Kelce get open in the middle of the field and find a soft spot and extend the drive, because it's so demoralizing to your team. So I think there is going to be a sense of that. I don't know necessarily for the Bills, but for Bills fans watching, like if the Chiefs put together a nice drive early on, it's going to be like, oh no, like it's going to be another one of these games where they just can't stop them, and it's going to have to be a back and forth thing, and whoever has the ball last wins. So the defense has to have some sort of like splash play statement game where they can say, no, we're not going to let the Chiefs do what they've always done. And if they can make the timely stops, maybe get a turnover, a splash play, then their odds are going to skyrocket in terms of being able to win. But if the Chiefs just have their way with them, then yeah, I would expect the Bills fans to be worried, and I would be worried at home watching too, as somebody who is a Josh Allen mark and wants him to get over the hump and wants to see him win a Super Bowl. I would be a little bit worried that it's going to be another Josh Allen masterclass that kind of gets lost in the annals of time because it came in a loss.
Yeah, and look, Travis Kelce's just on another level as well in the playoffs. 23 games, 172 catches, 2,000 yards, 20 touchdowns. One last thing about the Chiefs. Their defense has been good, but their run defense has been leaky. It has not been that good. Houston ran for $149 on them last week. The Pittsburgh Steelers ran for over 200 yards on them. I think it was week 17, week 15, something like that. And the Browns ran for $139 on them. So this defense is susceptible to, letting the opponent have success on the ground. And the Bills, which we're going to talk about here after the break, have just been really shockingly almost good at running the football and keeping the football as well. I'm going to take a real quick break, come back on the other side with Jarrett, talk Bills for a few minutes, and I want to get into a couple keys, some bold predictions, and I'm gonna force Jarrett to make a game prediction as well. So be right back after this quick break. All right, I am back here with Jarrett Bailey, and we've been talking Chiefs. Now I want to talk Bills for a few minutes. Quick injury update. So I'm at practice on Thursday. Christian Benford in a red non-contact jersey, still in concussion protocol. Everything I hear is that he should be good to go. He should be able to clear, and he'll be all right. Matt Milano was in a regular practice jersey. He was listed as limited, but there were several videos of him moving around. Terrell Bernard basically said in the locker room after practice, he should be good to go. So I would completely expect both of them to play. Taylor Rapp, another DNP, is very iffy. I do not think he'll play. It could be very likely be Cole Bishop, the rookie, coming into a major assignment for the Buffalo Bills. But that's what we got going on in terms of injuries. In terms of the Bills, Jared, their identity, which I'm sure you've been a little bit surprised watching them this season, that everybody eats thing, the strong running game. The Bills have run for at least 94 yards in 12 straight games. And when you go to pass the ball, 9 different Bills have led the team in receiving yards in a game this year. It's a lot. There's no more, Stephon Diggs taking these targets, putting up the numbers. You never know week to week who's going to be the guy who steps up. Sometimes nobody needs to step up because they barely even throw the football, which is nuts considering you got Josh Allen. But watching this team this season, how surprised have you been to see the success that the Bills have had, being committed to a very strong running game behind a very underrated offensive line, but also, like I said, distributing the ball? You never know week to week who's going to be the guy who they count on to make some plays in the passing game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be maybe the biggest factor of the game is, can the Bills establish a strong run game and be able to do that throughout the game? Because it's great that you can always rely on Josh Allen to be great, but it would be even better if he didn't always have to be great. So, if they can give James Cook, 20 carries and he gets, $110, that is a great recipe for success because it'll set up a lot of other things in the passing game and take the pressure off Josh Allen. So, and if anything, it'll open up the run game for Josh Allen too, because we know how great he is with his legs as well. I think that's going to be the biggest factor of this. And in terms of my surprise, I'm not necessarily surprised because Joe Brady showed that that's what he wanted to do when he got the interim tag at last season, because immediately we saw James Cook's touches go up both in the run game and in the receiving game. And And especially that game against Dallas last year where they ran for almost 300 yards and Josh only threw the ball 15 times. Like, if they can have games like that, they're more than happy to do it because it gives Josh, for all intents and purposes, like a little bit of a rest while they can just do, what they got to do to win the game and not have to worry about Josh being super.
All right, back again here with Jared Bailey. Had a little bit of technical difficulties. Those type of things happen when you record at places like StreamYard and stuff like that. But anyway, I thought your point about the Bill not being surprised because this is what Joe Brady, kind of what he was doing last year when he took over his OC. Thought that was a really, really good point. I'll say this, though. The last couple of years before this year, there's been times where like it didn't feel like there was any identity with the Bills. Like the identity was Josh Allen, go out there and be great. Like that kind of felt like it was the Bills' offensive identity, and that's really changed now. So maybe that doesn't surprise you, but are you surprised at how historically good the Bills have been, and Josh Allen specifically this year, at not turning the football over? The Bills have only turned over the ball on 4.2% of their drives. It's the best in the NFL in the last quarter century. Josh Allen's only got 8 turnovers in 18 games this year, including the playoffs now. And he's only been sacked 17 times in 18 games. So he's not taking sacks. And most importantly, he's like legitimately not turning the football over as well. Knowing the gunslinger that we've seen in the NFL here since he came in the league in 2018, does that surprise you? The way he's been able to so often, and I mean, you watch a lot of Josh Allen, he's dialed back a lot of those interceptable balls, those throws into high danger a lot this season.
I think that most people were surprised by that this season because a lot of people like wanted to put Josh in the box of like, oh, he's, this reckless gunslinger. He's always going to have turnover problems. And, you talked about it earlier with, I was voted the most overrated player in the league, which just keeps being proven to be more and more stupid by the week. Like I whatever, that pisses me off. I don't have to go on a rant. But in terms of like, he has just killed every narrative that there is about him. Where it's like, oh man, he can't beat good teams in the playoffs. Well, he's 2-0 against Lamar Jackson. So everybody like the TV media's like golden child can't get past the divisional round when he plays Josh Allen. So there's one narrative killed. And then obviously the turnover things coming into this year. He has the lowest bad play percentage since the NFL merger, and bad play percentage being a fumble, interception, or a sack. The lowest since the NFL merger. So there's another narrative killed. And if there's anything that Bills fans can be hopeful about this weekend, it's that he spent all year killing narratives and changing trends about both him and the Bills. Hopefully, this is another example this Sunday that we'll be able to see them kill another narrative of not being able to beat the Chiefs, and they finally get the job done. So I'm not necessarily surprised that Josh was able to cut it down so much. I didn't think he was going to be up at 18 again in terms of interceptions, but I figured that it would come down a lot simply because of the offense and the philosophy that Joe Brady has for the offense, where under Ken Dorsey, it was, a bombs away, live and die by the big play offense. And then with Brady, it's similar to what the Chiefs did when they traded Tyreek Hill. It was, all right, we're going to be efficient. We're going to be able to rely a little bit more on the run game and beat you death by 1,000 cuts rather than, a cannonball over the top. So he's been incredibly efficient with his play, but also it hasn't taken away his ability to make the incredible downfield throws. We've seen plenty of those this year. Even this past week, the one to Khalil Shakir down the middle of the field against Baltimore, the one to Keon Coleman against Detroit. Like, he obviously very much still has that, but it's much better to be able to do that and not have it be your entire offense where they rely on it, where they can now just have it be a part of their offense, not it be the entire offense. So I'm not surprised that he's been able to make that transition so well. I think that overall talent-wise, you can make the argument that he's, one of the 5 to 10 most talented quarterbacks we've ever seen. And he continues to, like I said, just kill narratives about him by the week almost. So not necessarily surprised at it at all.
Okay. Defensively. All right. So the Bills, I used the word leaky when describing the Chiefs' run defense earlier. I think the Bills' defense, I would call a little bit leaky in a way. Now, when they've not played well, the first 2 times, Baltimore, Houston, I will say injuries were a factor. The defense, especially against Baltimore, they were missing 3 starters.
Yeah.
And when they played Houston, there was no Teron Johnson, no Ed Oliver. Those are 2 good players. So that's a factor as well. But there have been games where they've been relatively healthy, like the Rams game, for an example, where they couldn't make a stop. They've been lousy first drives throughout the season,
Yeah.
something that I'm hoping doesn't happen on Sunday, but I'm almost bracing for the Chiefs to go down and score on their first drive. But anyway, the defense has not been good drive to drive. They've not been very good at getting off the field, making stops, stuff like that. But what they have been exceptional at are turnovers. Plus 24 turnover differential, which by far is the best in the NFL this year.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh was number 2, and they were plus 16. They've had 32 takeaways this year on defense. It's kind of been the great equalizer for the Bills. They didn't need it against Denver, but they needed it against Baltimore. That was literally the difference in the football game. Baltimore scored 5 times, and they got 3 turnovers or giveaways, you will call them. They didn't punt. They didn't punt that game. The Bills took the ball away or they gave up points, except for one kneel down right before the half. It's like, what are you thinking about this defense? Because again, the takeaways are huge, but you're talking playoff Patty Mahomes, man. You can't be banking on 3 takeaways on the road against the Chiefs. They're going to have to find a way to bear down against them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You can't your defensive identity can't be splash plays because it's things that you can't count on to happen week in and week out. Like they've got to be able to get stops. And that comes back to what I was saying earlier. Like the third down defense thing is a real thing and they got to be able to get off the field because if you're giving up consistent 10, 11 play drives to Mahomes and he's just wearing out the defense and tiring them out, then he's got you right where you want him. And he's going to be able to take advantage of that throughout the game. So if they can get like an early, I think the best case scenario for them is if they don't start with the ball, like an early 3 and out would be great. But if you can get them off the field in less than like 7, 8 plays, that's a big win. And especially if they don't get any points. So they have to start fast. And that's both sides of the ball because we've seen plenty of games where, against New England at home earlier this year, against Tennessee earlier this year, where you give up a 10-0 lead to Mason Rudolph, you give up a 14-0 lead to Drake May. Like you cannot do that this week. You can't have a game where you just come out just sleepwalking and fall behind early because that's when the Chiefs will really pounce on you. So then it would take away their ability to be multidimensional offensively if they have to kind of pass their way back into it and score quickly. So they need a fast start, especially from the defense. They need a strong start where they're not going to allow points. If they can get off the field in the first couple of drives without allowing a touchdown, that would be great. But they need a fast start from their defense.
I want to go over a couple of my keys for the game. I do this every week, and I want to get a couple quick thoughts from you. Like, we won't deep dive into all these. Some of these we've kind of talked about to some extent already on the show as well, but I have 3 every week. I might cheat and give you 1 or 2 bonus ones here, but to me, the biggest key with the Bills, I feel like, and it's almost like boring to say, but kind of dance with what's brought you in terms of the running game. I know a lot of people are out there saying, well, the Chiefs aren't going to let them run the football, this and that. Dude, being physical travels well. The Bills are a physical team that can run the football. The Chiefs have not been great at stopping the run. I will add, although the score of the first meeting means nothing, Spencer Brown didn't play that game, and he is a pretty good right tackle, a big physical right tackle. He's significantly better than Ryan Vandermark, and he's a good run blocker. I think the Bills, a key, don't stop being who you are because it's the Chiefs and on the road, and you're going to assume it's going to be 45-42, and Josh has got to throw the ball 45 times. Running the ball, doing so effectively, to me, is the biggest key because not only is that your style, what you do, but it also effectively is keeping the Chiefs off the field by sustaining those drives. And the Chiefs are really good at staying on the field, too. It's like something's got to give. One of these, there's only so many possessions in a game. Be that aggressor. Run the football like you've continued to do, even if it's not, the sexiest thing in the world.
And I'm actually going to write about this too because I think what they can do in the run game, what they should do. So last year we talked about that Dallas game. If you look, they did something where whatever side of the field they saw Micah Parsons on, they would shift the running back to the other side and they would run away from him. And it would give the offensive lineman, Spencer Brown especially, who had a big game that week, give him the ability to get downhill and get toward Parsons, and that would basically take him out of the play. They can basically do that same thing where Chris Jones is going to line up against Spencer Brown, run the other way. Don't run into Chris Jones. And if that forces them to move Chris Jones around the defensive line a little bit, then okay, but don't run it at Chris Jones. And if you do it off of, counter type plays where you're going to have extra help coming over to give Spencer Brown a little bit of a hand. So I think that that'll be part of the game plan in terms of running the ball is don't run it at Chris Jones. You make other guys on that defense beat you. And hopefully we see a little bit of that as well. And similar in the pass plays to the running backs too, whether it be Ray Davis or Ty Johnson, especially, like do it away from Chris Jones. Like make him chase you. Don't run towards him. So if they can do all they can to keep 95 at bay, that would give them a tremendous chance to take advantage of the Chiefs defense.
We talked about this a little bit. Look, the Bills don't have, say, the Houston pass rush. There's no Will Anderson or Danielle Hunter on this team. You're not bringing Pat Mahomes to the ground 4, 5, 6 times. I'd be shocked if they do anyway. But still, find ways to make him uncomfortable, whether it's having at least some pressure. Ed Oliver's got to be big this game. He fell on his face last year against the Chiefs in the playoffs. He did nothing. He had a good game in week 10 or 11, whenever they played earlier this season. Got to have that again. He is such an important part to that defensive line. Rizzo, of course, Von Miller, you mentioned these guys. Epinesa. Not even so much about sacking him. It's about forcing him into pressure, making him run. There's not a lot that's going to confuse him, but mixing some things up, kind of being unpredictable a little bit. You got to make life uncomfortable for Patrick Mahomes because he's just too good. I love Lamar. Lamar's exciting. He's fun. He's probably going to win his 3rd MVP, although personally, I would have voted for Josh Allen, but that's neither here nor there. Lamar's a great player, but Lamar made a couple, I would say almost unforced errors in that first half of that game last Sunday. I just don't see Pat Mahomes doing that. Not unforced errors, but you can. And the Bills have had success in the regular season, forcing him into errors, but the unforced errors aren't going to happen. You got to make him uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the pass rush is not necessarily, the biggest thing is just going to be keep him hemmed in. And if you're going to keep him hemmed in, though, you need that interior pressure to really make him uncomfortable to force him into sacks. And if Oliver's not having a big game, and look, he's going to be facing arguably the best interior offensive line in football with Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, and Joe Thuney. Like that is the best trio of guys, guard, center, guard in the NFL. They're going to need the entire defensive line to play big. They're going to need a big game from Jones and Jordan Phillips, and they need everybody to step up. So if you can get interior pressure and keep him hemmed in and keep Mahomes from running around and extending the play, that would be great. And it's not about doing it every down, because you're not going to do it every down. But if you can do it on timely plays and win that battle, then that's great. But they do need a big game from the defensive line. They need big plays. They need Russo, Epinesa, Miller. Again, even if you don't get home, make him uncomfortable. And if you can do that, then gives you a much better shot at winning.
You mentioned Chris Jones and what a factor you can't let him be if you're the Buffalo Bills. And I'll tie that into him and Travis Kelce. I go back and I've watched last year's game, and there's lots of factors. I mean, the Bills had 3 long drops, just inexcusable drops, 2 by Sherfield, 1 by Stephon Diggs. Other factors in that game. AJ Klein coming off the couch, watching Travis Kelce, things like that just can't happen. But to me, I go back to that Houston game last week, and it was frustrating watching Mahomes get a couple calls. It was frustrating, lots of things, but nothing was more frustrating than not covering Travis Kelce and him being wide open, working the middle of the field so much. To me, a key is like what you just said about Chris Jones. Don't let Chris Jones and Travis Kelce be dominant, because last year, the biggest difference between the Bills and the Chiefs at the end of the day was Chris Jones made a big play at the end of the game when he had to. He forced a quick Josh Allen throw that he couldn't get enough on, which would have been a touchdown, and Travis Kelce killed him. Meanwhile, Stephon Diggs sucked last year. And again, Ed Oliver, a literal non-factor. The Bills' secondary star players. You got to let other guys beat you. If DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, some of these other guys beat you, if the linebackers have a big game for the Chiefs, so be it, man. But Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, find schematic ways. You talked about it with Chris Jones. Pay heavy attention to Travis Kelce. You got to count from him every single play. Don't let this guy get open and run free. Make DeAndre Hopkins or someone else beat you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And whether that's, a Taron Johnson job, or it's a Rob Bernard job, or a Matt Milano job, whoever is going, and I assume, there's going to be a lot of guys wearing that hat. It's not going to be one guy, but don't let the usual suspects be what sends you home. Make them find other ways to beat you. And look, I would suspect they put Benford on Hollywood Brown just because he's probably a little bit more explosive at this point in his career, and leave Hopkins up for Roswell Douglas. Whatever they do, I'm just kind of spitballing here.
Yeah.
But don't let 87 be the one that kills you. If you do lose, then make sure it's DeAndre Hopkins at his age beating you. Make sure it's Hollywood Brown of all people that is the thorn in your side. Don't let it be the guy who everybody in the building knows they're going to try to target, and make him as much of a non-factor as he possibly can.
Yeah, for sure. Bonus one here too. Let's not spot the Kansas City Chiefs a touchdown to start this football game.
Yeah.
All right. Even when the Bills, again, even when they've played well this year, they have just this bad habit of the defense just kind of sleepwalking in the first drive, and then they start to figure some things out later. Chiefs ain't the team to do that with. In the playoffs, the Bills have been successful. Bo Nix connected on that long touchdown pass on the first series of the game to the rookie Franklin. Bam. Bills are down to Denver 7-0. Last week against Baltimore. Baltimore goes right down the field. Lamar 3 for 3 for 60 yards on the first drive. Down 7-0. Look, you're in Orchard Park. It's home. It's easy to not panic. The Bills don't panic. I'll give them that, okay? You said it earlier. Fans may panic more than the team. Still, though, 7-0 is 7-0 no matter what way you look at it. And it's a lot different when you're at home and you still got that crowd behind you, as opposed to going to Arrowhead. Bam, you're down 7-0. That crowd is going to be alive to start the game as it is. They're going to go to another level. They're a great fan base as well. If you give the Chiefs, you spot them a touchdown lead because you come out and you fall asleep on the first drive of the game. So maybe not fall down 7-0. In fact, let me ask you a question. If you're the Bills and you win the toss, do you consider taking the ball? I know it's not a Sean McDermott thing. He likes to defer. He did it last week.
No.
Worked out. It should have worked out anyway, because they could have double dipped second and third quarter. Didn't work out though in the second half of that. But if you're Sean McDermott, do you consider trying to get that ball going down and scoring first so you don't fall down 7-0?
I understand the aggression behind it, but this is one where it would make sense to me to defer and hope the defense gets a stop, because then, like you said, you could get that chance to double dip if you get the ball last at the end of the first half. Yep. And look, if they double dip, then great. Like, especially if it's it's a 13-7 game and they get the ball out and they make it 20-7 or even 16-7, massive advantage to the Bills. So usually, like, I would understand the aggression and whatnot, but I think I would want the ball coming out of the half more than I would want it first.
All right. Is there anything key-wise that we kind of haven't talked about if you're looking at it from a Buffalo Bills perspective that I feel like we've covered everything you could possibly? Tyler Bass, make your kicks. I mean, I really... Yeah.
Just keep the lid on. Like, the Chiefs haven't been explosive all year. Don't let this be the game that Mahomes finally hits a long bomb to Xavier Worthy, and that's going to be a lot on Damar Hamlin, who got beat over the top last week. Yeah. Cole Bishop is going to have a lot of responsibilities this week. Like, just keep the lid on. Like, this cannot be the week where they finally start figuring things out.
100%. I like to end with bowl predictions. I do every week. I usually think these are kind of fun. Some of them have been worked out pretty well for me too. A couple outlandish ones as well. I got 3. One of them, under normal circumstances, this would be not bold at all. This would barely be like medium wing sauce, maybe even mild wing sauce most of the time. But each team's going to have 1 turnover. And again, normally that's nothing. Like, are you kidding me? But these teams do not turn the ball over. I think you're going to see 1 turnover from each team. And here's the one where I think it does get a little spicier, because Amari Cooper has not done much. We've been talking a lot about the Bills, staying committed, running the football. I do think on some levels, not completely shutting it down, but the Chiefs are going to be more committed to trying to stop the run. I think these outside receivers who have not had to do anything these last 2 weeks are going to have to step up in the course of this game. I think Amari Cooper is going to do it. And by the way, I don't know how much you've heard this week coming out of Buffalo, but he was asked about not getting the ball and not getting targets this week, and he can't care less. He does not care at all. He just wants to win, and he's excited to be in this position. He's never been in this position throughout his career. He's ready to make a play if need be. This is going to be that week. 4 catches, 65+ yards, and a touchdown I got for Amari Cooper. You seeing that?
Well, I said last week was going to be the big Amari Cooper game, so hopefully I was just a week early. Because he had a big catch in the first matchup in the regular season where it was like this weird over-the-shoulder thing that got him set up in the red zone. I think it led to the James Cook touchdown. So he's shown that he can make those those catches when called upon. And I think he's brought the exact energy that the Bills needed, where like he's Amari Cooper, so he's going to draw attention. And defenses have to respect him, but it opens up things for guys like Shakir and Samuel and Mac Hollins underneath. So hopefully we get to see at least one big Amari Cooper catch that ends up making a difference.
Yeah, and look, he's not even playing 40% of the plays right now in the playoffs. So it's not even like he is an attention grabber when he's out there. But if he's on the sidelines, that's not really the case. So I would expect to see him on the field more in this football game. And then my last bold prediction, again, in the past, this was not anything, bold at all. But the Kansas City Chiefs, again, no one's scored more than 25 on them all year except the Bills. And Josh Allen's going to throw for 3 touchdowns. The Bills are going to run the ball some in the red zone. Again, the way the Bills, if they get in close, they've been pounding the football into the red zone. The Bills were 3 for 3 in the red zone in the first half last week against Baltimore. That was a big, big reason why they won that football game. But I got Josh going for 3, man. I think you kind of know where I'm going when it gets to a game prediction based on what I'm telling you here. But Josh Allen's going to throw for 3 touchdowns, which is going to be more than Patrick Mahomes does.
I feel like Dawson Knox has to be one of those because if I'm correct, does he have a touchdown this postseason?
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like usually he's the guy in the postseason to get a lot of touchdowns. So if that's the case, I would expect 88 to end up with at least one of those.
Okay, let's end here. I want to get your outlook for the game, how you think it's going to go, and if you want to throw a score in there, feel free to do that as well. But what's your take on how you see this game playing out?
I think it's either going to be like back and forth, very close, like it always is, and the Chiefs win another like heartbreaker over Buffalo, or the Bills just beat the piss out of them. I think it's going to be one of two. And by my own logic, I always say like, until you've proven to me that you can do it, I can't pick you to do it. I've picked them each of the last 2 games to do it, and look, my heart will pick Buffalo. My head will pick Kansas City until proven otherwise. So I hope to whatever God is listening that the Bills get the job done. But until I see them do it, like I can't pick them to do it.
I completely understand that, and it's very reasonable logic. I'll say this: covering this team 5 days a week, all season long. I've been saying since early in the year, there's just something about this team that has felt different. Lots of, I don't know, just signs, things in the air. Like even this last week, like there was a brutal snowstorm that hit Buffalo the day after the game. They didn't have to go through that playing Derrick Henry in that type of, snow and wind like they did Monday. To me, I almost took that like as a sign. The fact that the Ravens turned the ball over 3 times, which they don't do that. It was Billsy. In fact, we talked about this earlier this week. It was a Billsy game, but usually it's the Buffalo Bills who do Billsy things, and that's how they find ways to lose. But it's been the opponents who have been doing that. To me, and I could have said this last year, I know the Bills were at home. You got the Chiefs at home in the playoffs. This was going to be the year. If not now, then when? I really feel like that way right now. If not now, then when? And it just feels to me like the year that Sean McDermott sheds that narrative that, he's Marty Schottenheimer, which is ridiculous to begin with, but he sheds that. Or that Josh Allen he's not on Mahomes' level because he can't beat him when it matters. All those narratives, I think, get put to bed. And I don't know why, because this hasn't been the Bills' ammo. Well, they've scored points on everybody. I got the Bills winning this game 34-23. A 2-score game.
That's what I could, if they do win, I think it's going to be like relatively lopsided. Where I'm trying to think of like a good example of that, like kind of like the Super Bowl between Denver and Seattle. We're like, oh man, this is going to be great. And then Denver just shits the bed and Seattle beats the hell out of them. Like I could see it being something like that if the Bills do win. I don't expect that per se. Like I expect a closer game one way or the other. Like I said, my heart says Buffalo. My head, unfortunately, will say Kansas City until Buffalo gets it. And look, I do agree with you on the fact that like a lot of things just feel like it's going their way. McDermott has kind of, I don't know, he just feels more laid back and less like stress in a lot of ways. He's being a lot more open with like going for it and being aggressive. And Mac Hollins is Mac Hollins and just a fun dude. Like the vibes around this team just feel really good. And they're a lot healthier in this game than they were last year, where Bernard and Milano both didn't play last year. It was Dorian Williams and AJ Klein. So, they're a lot more healthy on both sides of the ball. I don't think they have any sort of like injuries on offense. So like this is the if not now when type of season for them. And I truly hope it is this year. I really hope it is.
They're confident. That's like I say, they're confident. I don't think they'll get rattled, but again, you can't fall down. If you fall down 16-3 or something like that against the Chiefs and they get to pin their ears back and you take away that running game from Buffalo and you have to make Josh throw the ball 40 times, you're probably looking at the same result that we've seen the last handful of years. Don't think that's going to happen, though. We'll find out one way or the other. It's exciting. Cannot wait to see. Real quick, by the way, who's going to win in the NFC? If the Bills do get past the Chiefs, who are you picking? Who are the Bills going to play in the Super Bowl?
If there's a God in heaven, it will be the Washington Commanders. Nobody wants to see Chiefs, Eagles, either of those in another Super Bowl because they're both boring as hell and just nobody wants it. So hopefully it's Washington. I think that's the far better story. Jaden Daniels, he would become the first rookie quarterback to lead the team to a Super Bowl. I think that would be great. They're playing a lot of like really fun football right now, but the defense needs to tighten up. So that's another head-heart situation where my heart says Washington, but my head kind of says Philadelphia. But if they can slow down Saquon Barkley, I think that they not only like I think that they will win. I think that that's the big key: slow down Saquon, make Jalen Hurts beat you, and if they can do that, then I think they win.
I agree with you 100%. All right, guys, make sure you're following. If you're not already, follow Jarrett on Twitter at JBaileyNFL. Check out his work at both the Sporting News, especially if you're a Steelers fan, behind the steel curtain. By the way, I am a Steelers fan. I mean, I'm obviously a Bills fan. Mm-hmm. I've always had a respect for the tradition of the Steelers. Get rid of Russ Wilson, man. He can't. That can't be the quarterback. Cannot be the quarterback.
That's not the case next year. Is that they have something new? It's hard to be. It's hard being a Steelers fan. I'll say that. The last decade hasn't been fun. So hopefully some good things come. We'll see.
All right, Jarrett. I appreciate you very much, buddy.
Absolutely, man.
All right, guys, take care. I'll be back. Might have a live show sometime on Saturday, but if not, we will be live immediately after the game. Joe from Queens will join me, and we'll break it down. Bills, Chiefs. Talk to you then.